Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call the special meeting of the Salisbury City Council to order. We're going to don't have any announcements unless Jack had something on there. Kim, were there any special announcements? Nope. Okay, so what we're going to do for a moment is do a silent meditation and reflect on a lot of the people who have lost their lives through this situation. And thank you. So we'll go to a silent meditation. Thank you. At this time, I entertain a motion to adopt the agenda for the special meeting.
So move.
Second.
We'll go down the list. All those in favor: April,
Aye.
Angela,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Jack, are you on? Nope. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the first and only item on the agenda is ordinance number 2591. It's a second reading authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Maryland Department of General Services for the purpose of accepting grant funds in the amount of $100,000 and approving a budget amendment to appropriate the grant funds for the city to purchase property located at 319 Truett Street from Devreco LLC. Mark?
Thank you. This is an ordinance of the City of Salisbury, Maryland, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Maryland Department of General Services for the purpose of accepting grant funds in the amount of $100,000 and approving a budget amendment to appropriate the grant funds for the city to purchase property located at 319 Truett Street from Devreco LLC. Whereas the City of Salisbury desires to purchase the property located at 319 Truett Street to continue to operate the Truett Street Community Center, and whereas the Maryland Department of General Services has awarded the city grant funds in the amount of $100,000 for the purchase of the community center at 319 Truett Street, and whereas the Department of General Services grant requires the city to match the funds that have been awarded, and whereas the city has already appropriated the matching funds to be used for the purchase of the property, and whereas the city must enter into a grant agreement with the Department of General Services defining how these funds must be expended, and whereas 7.29 of the Salisbury City Charter forbids contracts requiring expenditures in excess of the amounts appropriated for that general classification or expenditure, and forbids any office, department, or agency from expending funds not appropriated, and whereas appropriations necessary to execute the purpose of this grant must be made on the recommendation of the mayor and approval of 4/5 of the council of the City of Salisbury. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Salisbury that Mayor Jacob R. Day is hereby authorized to enter into the attached grant agreement with the Maryland Department of General Services to accept grant funds in the amount of $100,000. And be it further ordained that the city's grant fund budget be amended as follows, with an increase the State of Maryland Department of General Services grant by $100,000 and an increase in the buildings account by an equivalent amount.
So I'll entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Does anybody have any questions? I'll go down the list. April, any questions, comments?
I just have a comment, and this is something great for our city, something exceptional for that community. And I see it being a good thing that we're doing. So I'm all for everything.
Angela?
No comments other than I think it's a wonderful thing.
Michelle?
No comments other than what everybody else has already said. It's fantastic. I'm glad.
Jack, are you on?
He isn't. He dropped off again. It looks like he lost internet. He's going to try to call in.
Okay, I think he's having some connection issues. And what I'll say is what I've seen in the community here on this side of town, this has been a positive influence and impact on our neighborhood. And we're very appreciative for the community center here on Truett Street. So we'll go down and do a roll call vote. April?
Yay.
Angela?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Jack, did you get on? No? Okay. And the chair votes aye. The ordinance passes 4-0. And we will adjourn the special meeting. And we are now in a work session. So looks like the first item on our agenda today is going to be the Atlantic Tractor John Deere Drive annexation. So with us, we have Bill Holland, Permits and Inspections Manager. Bill, the floor is yours.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Back on the agenda for this work session is Atlantic Tractor. They petitioned for annexation back in February of 2019. They need access to city utilities for water and sewer. This came to a work session back in August of 2019. At that time, their representative or their attorney, Mr. William McAllister, he provided a letter requesting a waiver of personal property tax. At any given time, Atlantic Tractor can have between $3 and $4 million worth of agricultural vehicle equipment. At this meeting, during this meeting in August, the City Council had numerous questions and thought it'd be best to table the annexation for now. And back in February of this year, Mr. McAllister forwarded a letter, which is in your package, to City Attorney Mark Tillman, requesting an additional meeting with the city to discuss the possibility of a phase-in of vehicle inventory tax. This was handed over to our the city's annexation consultant, Mike Sullivan, and he's prepared a physical impact memorandum, which is also in your information that you received. And with that in mind, I'm going to turn that over to Mike to let him explain this phase in vehicle inventory tax.
Thank you, Bill. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
We have a property that is located on John Deere Drive, currently used for the operations of an Atlantic Tractor business. John Deere Drive is located just past Purdue Stadium. Originally, as Mr. Holland indicated in his introduction, the users of the property, with the consent of the owners, Mr. Timothy Tyndall and Miss Elizabeth Tyndall, requested annexation by filing a petition with the city of Salisbury. That request for annexation also included a request that the city waive the inventory tax that it imposes on businesses like that of Atlantic Tractor within its municipal limits. That discussion was ultimately tabled, as Mr. Holland explained. It then resulted in a letter dated February 10, 2020 from Mr. Danny McAllister, the attorney for Atlantic Tractor, suggesting the possibility of a phase-in of the inventory tax. I am of the impression that the city's administration has expressed an openness to considering a phasing in of the inventory tax that would be extended over a period of 7 years from the date of annexation. There wasn't much more detail with respect to that phasing in, so the fiscal impact study effectively addresses the proportional phasing in with the tax starting at 1/7 of what the ultimate tax liability would be, and ending year 7 with a full and complete total tax liability that would be paid for by either Atlantic Tractor or any other party that's imposed that particular tax assessment upon the property's annexation. As you can tell from my memo, I ran through several fiscal considerations that are reviewed whenever property is the subject of an annexation to the city of Salisbury. Specifically, we take a look at what the expected real property assessment would be if that particular property is added to the city's inventory. And we also take a look from a 5,000-foot view about what potential costs the city might incur by providing that property public services that are germane to whatever type of business is located at the property. In this case, it would be one that operates an Atlantic Tractor business. You'll notice that the fiscal impact memo addresses the EDU fee that is charged, which under the city's budget is referenced as a capacity fee assessment. And here, the capacity fee would be $3,533. That would be the case regardless of any type of inventory tax waiver or not, as would the estimated real property tax, which would fall somewhere in the range of $9,982. We move forward to addressing the phase-in, and you'll see the chart that's provided in my memo gives you an indication of not only the amount that would be charged, but the discounts that they would be receiving under a phase-in scenario. Ultimately, what the city must address is twofold. One, a question that's specific to this particular request. Is the city council interested in annexing the property with the condition that the property and its users be given a tax discount? Not a tax credit, but effectively a tax subsidy. And the greater question for the city to answer is, with respect to all annexations that come before the city council for approval, specifically the annexation agreements that are prepared in connection with those annexations, does the city council want to now consider property tax waivers, discounts, subsidies as being a part of and a condition to the city's annexation of that property? And so the city council must address not only its favorability or otherwise to the phase-in of the inventory tax that is proposed and then modeled in the memo, but the city council must also address the greater overarching principal question of, should annexations include some type of condition that reflects the property owner or the user of that property's tax liability upon annexation? And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have based on your review of the memo. And likewise, Mr. McAllister is on the line now. I'm sure that he can answer any questions that you might have specific to Atlantic Tractor's request. And Mr. Stillman is also well briefed on this.
Thank you, Michael. I'm gonna just say, if some of you are on phones and you're not speaking, can you please mute your phone, because there's still some background noise, and every time it pops up, a phone symbol pops up and it cuts into when Michael was speaking. So we'll go forward here. Anybody have any questions about this memo? I'll start with Jack. Are you on?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Did you want to take over?
No, go ahead. You're doing a good job. I don't have any video, so.
Okay. Did you have any comments on the memo?
I'll give my comments last, if you
Okay.
don't mind.
Okay. April, did you have any comments?
No.
Michelle, did you have any comments?
No comments right now.
Angela, any comments?
I don't have any comments at this very minute, no.
Okay. I guess maybe I'll ask Julia. What is the mayor on, or he's not on? Okay.
I'm here.
Oh, hey. Oh, there he is. So what is your, as far as the phase-in tax obligation, I think this is a good step process to phase that inventory tax in. What's your opinion on this and your thoughts behind it?
Yeah, so I think after a long back and forth with Atlantic Tractor and with conversations with our team and with you and Council President Heath, I've come to the conclusion that I think we have a reasonable agreement. I think under different dynamics and in different situations, we might choose different outcomes. But I think this is the best outcome that we can expect to achieve at this time. And I think we should proceed with it.
Okay. Jack, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I do. Last time we met, I had a great concern, and I still have that concern, and it's relative to precedent setting. Mr. Tillman, I think that you can bear this out, that if there's no way to protect this being a one-off, this opens us up at any point in time, and I think that the council would have a rough time denying a future annexation with a similar type request or a request of other givebacks in the process, and that is a concern of mine.
Mr. Tillman?
The current policy allows this to be done. And it's my understanding, I mean, I understand Mr. Heath's concern that this will certainly, what you give to one will be expected by others. My only comment on this, I don't know if it was included in the packet or not yet, is do we have a copy of Atlantic Tractor's lease and commitment to this property? I don't hear.
That question for me, I don't have one.
That is an excellent question.
Mr. McAllister, I don't hear you.
He doesn't have audio, I don't think.
No, I don't think so either.
Julia, can you?
It's not me, it's him. Well, now it's him. Hang on. He should, it's something on his end.
If Mr. McAllister doesn't, I mean, if he can't get back on, I certainly, this is not the final vote. This is a work session. So we certainly could get that from them for your consideration.
That would be fine.
He needs to call in with his cell phone.
That's also in the packet at the beginning.
He's dialing in now.
Okay. Thank you.
My understanding was that nothing is necessarily precedent setting when it comes to annexation agreements. That we're afforded essentially the flexibility under Maryland law to do whatever we want each time. So this is very different from, say, if we were to establish, a different precedent under law. Now, that was the understanding that I've heard repeated multiple times as we've gone through annexation agreements over the last couple of years. If somebody can confirm that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm Mr. Mayor. As far as precedent setting, by that, if you mean could a court compel you to give it to everyone? The answer is no.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, me personally, I think we've struck a balance in the agreement. And I mean, we're not going to completely eliminate that tax. It's still going to be there. But it would be nice to know, like was asked, what their long-term commitment is to that property. And I support it as we've adjusted it. So, but we'll wait, see if he can get on.
Mr. Boda,
Yes.
given Mark's latest comment, I would consider moving it forward as well.
Okay.
But I definitely think we should get the information relative to their commitment,
Yes.
because if they leave after 4 years, we're left holding the bag.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. McAllister, I just sent you the logins credentials in the chat if you're having trouble finding them.
While we have a second, this is Amanda Pollock. I just wanted to clarify the next step here would be to send to Planning Commission for a zoning recommendation. It's actually not gotten out of council work session yet. So there will be some gap. If you decide to forward this on, the step after today would be to send it to Planning Commission for a zoning recommendation.
So, I mean, so that still gives us some time to get some more information. So I'm comfortable with moving it forward to the Planning Commission. April?
I am as well.
Angela?
Can you folks hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
You were better off before, I suspect. I apologize for that. Relative to the commitment, I assumed that the 7-year phase-in was in large part to assume that the 7 years was the minimum commitment for the lease site, and that any waivers would be defaulted on should that 7-year commitment not be honored. I'm sorry for the reverb, but we have been waiting to renew the lease. As we mentioned a year ago, this is a year for renewal, in large part to assess the economics. My letter in February of this past year was completely coincidental with the pandemic economic issues, but of course, it's not hard to imagine that they haven't helped any with the costs and expenses of annexation. So the phasing in light of the economic shutdown and the costs associated with annexation, as I understood, Mr. Sullivan's proposal would come with the 7-year commitment. But the lease has not been renewed because the position of the city was uncertain and remains, I guess, uncertain.
So we were just going through roll call to move it forward to the Planning Commission, which is the next step. Angela, are you okay? Can everybody who's not speaking, please put your phones on mute? It's causing some echo.
I think if Mr. McAllister can mute his computer, I think some of it's coming from that still being done.
By moving it on to the Planning Commission, does it then come back to the council for a work session for final approval?
Yes, it would come back. You will actually see the full annexation plan and annexation agreement after we get that zoning recommendation. So there's a fair amount of work that would get done before it comes back to you.
Okay. Yeah, we can.
Michelle?
I still have some concerns about it, but I'd be willing to move it forward.
Okay, thank you. Jack?
Yeah, I'm moving it forward.
Okay, and I support moving it forward. Thank you.
If I could add one additional thing, I just want to be clear that the fiscal impact wasn't conditioned upon any consistent or future use of the property. It's the property that would be annexed, and so it's the property that's the subject of that annexation. So if, for instance, they decided to leave the property 2 years after they had been annexed, well, the property wouldn't be used for anything, presumably. It wouldn't have any tenants therefore it wouldn't have any inventory that would be subject to the tax. I think that the issues that you might be questioning is what would happen if it were a different user of the property other than Atlantic Tractor. And I would suggest that, at least for purposes of uniformity and keeping everything as clear as possible, that the annexation agreement, including any condition about phasing in the inventory tax, would relate to that property, that it wouldn't actually relate to the user of that property for a whole host of reasons. Partly because the user can walk and talk exactly like the same as its former user, but actually be a different user. And so if we're talking about annexing property, we're talking about something that will go along with the annexation of that parcel, not actually having to do with the use of that parcel. So I just want to be clear that the fiscal impact didn't have anything to do with conditioning a consistent current use of the property. It's 7 years from the date that it gets annexed.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. All right, so our next item on the agenda is going to be the sale of 1141 South Division Street. Jennifer?
Yes, thank you. Yes, this is for council's discussion this evening. Back in September, the Department of Procurement did issue a competitive solicitation for the sale of 1141 South Division Street. We did not receive any proposals. In April of 2020, we did get an offer from Blair Rainier to purchase the parcel for $16,000. We had, prior to that, also received an appraisal done by Bill McCain, a local real estate appraiser, who valued the property at such, and that information was included in your packet. So this is right now for council's discussion to see if we want to move this forward to accept the proposal from, or the offer of sale from Mr. Rainier.
April, do you have any questions?
No.
Angela?
None.
Michelle?
No questions.
Mr. Heath?
I have
Jack?
none.
Okay. And I don't have any questions either, and I'm comfortable with moving forward on this. Is everybody else, how do you feel? You comfortable moving it forward, April?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
And I am as well. So thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate it.
Okay, we'll get it on the legislative agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is eliminating the city's maximum real property tax. Julia.
Yes, thank you, council. Before you is a charter change, charter amendment that would eliminate the max tax rate that we have. So in the city charter under SC 7-3035, the max tax rate is identified at 76 cents per $100 valuation for all general purposes other than for servicing bonds. In FY21, the existing debt service on bonds decreases, thereby reducing the max tax that we're allowed. And also in FY21, real property assessments rise. These conditions result in the existing max tax rate to be exceeded in FY21, even if the FY20 tax rates are maintained and not increased. The max tax rate is an arbitrary figure that the city set a number of years ago and does not bear any real relationship to current costs to the city for service delivery to our citizens. And it's important that this charter change to the tax rate goes into effect in the time for the adoption of the FY21 budget. So before July 1st, and it's necessary for council to act on this charter change in time to comply with the requirement that the change is in effect is not effective until after 50 days from when it's adopted. And Keith can certainly weigh in if there are more technical questions on max tax. But if we want to keep the budget or some similar budget to what was presented, there is a change that will be needed, which is before you today. And I think it's important to note that if we don't remove the max tax rate that's in the charter, we will continually revisit this and have a similar discussion, which can be cumbersome.
Okay.
Mr. Boda?
Yes.
Oh,
you're back on.
Could I just yeah, I'm back on. I think I'm okay. But who knows? My whole internet just died. I apologize. The one thing that makes no sense to me about this whole thing is usually reduction of debt is a good thing. So essentially what happened is we're being handcuffed with meeting our expense requirement because we're driving our debt down, which is a good thing. So Keith, if I'm stating this incorrectly, please correct me. But I think Julia makes a very valid point. We're going to be handling it. If we continue to try to reduce our debt, we're going to be running up against this year after year after year. And future councils will be doing the same thing. Am I right, Keith, in my assessment?
You're muted, Keith.
Yes, it's going to continue to pop up. Also, the mechanics of it, it's worth noting that the mechanics of this aren't straightforward, they're ambiguous. That you can calculate the maximum tax multiple ways. You could base it on estimates used for budget. You could base the assessments based on what was in the actual audit booklet. There's a question whether that you add back to the assessment exempt inventory. In other words, we choose to exempt 55% of inventory from, and so that has a lot to do with whether we're compliant now or whether we wouldn't be. So either we would have to get into the mechanics and draft an ordinance that was clear, because if we continue forward with an ambiguous one, we really don't know whether we're complying or not, because the original language isn't very clear. As often is the case with tax law.
Yeah.
The mechanics of it are left open-ended so that you can interpret it more than one way.
I think it takes the whole, if we go ahead and move this forward, I think it takes the guesswork
exactly
out. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Boda, questions or comments?
Yeah, so I guess maybe I'm a little confused on where it says basically the max tax rate is 76 per $100 valuation. What, I mean, that's not our current property tax rate. What, I don't know, maybe that needs to be explained a little bit better, because even the what was sent to us is still a little confusing, and I think people are going to be confused.
If I can, Mr. Boda, it's for our budget less our budgeted expenditures, general fund less debt service. So, you know, again, as we reduce debt service, it limits what what we can do, what's freed up otherwise in our budget. So it's counterintuitive, as Jack said. So you're right that is not our tax rate. That is, however, would be the limit, the cap, the max portion of our revenues from our property taxes that could be applied to expenses other than debt service. It doesn't make sense. I don't understand why anybody, and this is not to insult, past leaders, but I don't understand why an arbitrary mechanism like that would be used versus having, the political limitation on don't raise tax rates because it's bad for you. And nobody wants to, tax rates increased instead of just picking one. It's sort of like our own, deep in the code secret version of the revenue cap in some ways. An arbitrary limitation on revenue collecting measures. Even if there are other ways that those expenses for property owners will still go up, based on the tax rate. So it's just so you could raise debt tremendously, and put that burden on the backs of property owners, but it limits what you can do in terms of actual operations of the city, say, providing police services, fire services, things like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Can I ask a question? What does anyone know? How long has this existed in our process or in our budgeting or in recent years, or has this always had a mechanism like this?
Keith, can you chime in?
We know when it was.
Oh, hang on, you're muted again.
I don't have in front of me the actual date, but it has been increased once rather than removed. At that time, Mayor Tillman and John Pick recommended it be removed then, but instead it was increased to the 76 cents. It is worth pointing out that might make it clear, the current amount of debt service represents about 38.5 cents compared to our assessments. So if you add that 38.5 to 76 cents, you get 1.14. And you can say, well, how can we have a 1.14? That's more than the 0.9832 on real property. But personal property is kicking it up by being 240. And all of that is confusing because back in the day, the assessments had a multiple of 2.5. So a lot of things have changed to muddy the waters, and just to arbitrarily pick a new amount doesn't make sense. It's just, there is no mechanical way to make sense out of it.
So,
Thank you, Keith. Angela, do you have a follow-up?
Okay, this is the bottom line for me is that the truth is the truth. This is confusing. You could write this in any language you want, and I have no understanding of this, except for it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. What I'm asking is basically we're going to get rid of it or reduce it. Is that what I understand?
To eliminate it.
Okay.
Otherwise, if that's the case and we continue to drive debt down, we'll be coming up with.
Uh-oh, he froze again.
Freeze again.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I mean, and that makes sense to me. I mean, that's fine, but that's the best I can explain. I mean, that's the best. I'm still gonna have more questions about it. I mean, if you me out a great deal because I won't have to deal with this ever again.
Yeah, I think I remember when they discussed it, and this was probably like 14, 15 years ago when it was an issue. But maybe it was longer than that. But I remember that there was a discussion about it and they talked about it. But then I think they just, like you said, raised it to 76 cents. And and when we look at the overall, when you said like the 1.14, that is all of our tax rates for all of our different things, the railroad tax, the inventory tax, your property tax. So that's why that average is a 1.14. So, all right. So I'm starting to, it takes a little bit. I probably should have drank some more coffee before the meeting. But so, okay. Yeah, I get what's happening here. So, I'm comfortable with moving this forward. April, any comments or thoughts?
No, I have no comments, but I do agree with removing.
Okay. Angela, are you okay with moving forward with this?
100%.
Okay.
as quick as
Uh,
possible.
Anytime we can eliminate confusion, I think it's a great thing. Michelle, how do you feel?
Yeah, let's move this forward. Definitely, it's
Okay.
something that needs to be done.
Jack, did you get back on or?
He's not.
Okay, so that's four of us. I want to move this forward and thank you, Keith and Julia, for that. Our next item is the elections budget amendment discussion again. Kim, you are on.
Hi, everybody. At the last meeting, you gave unanimous consensus to advance the budget amendment if whether or not discount had been given by the county. If you recall,
Yes.
we requested discount. Well, Mr. Gutierrez went to the county local board of elections, the county, Wacomico County Board, and made the request. They voted not to send the letter to county administration. Instead, they wanted to send a letter to county administration, letting them know that we might be contacting them directly. So they haven't sent that letter as yet. Anthony sent me an email saying they're not in the office every day right now. And when the letter was final, was ready to go, he would send it to me. So his letter would be to county administration, letting them know that the local board of elections had, decided what they decided, and instead voted that letter to them. So I guess your decision to make would be whether you want to send a letter.
Essentially sending a letter to the county administration.
Asking for reduction, a discount. Mm-hmm.
Okay, can I?
I already know that answer, so you probably don't want me signing that letter.
Let me understand this. So they didn't even bother going to the county to ask?
They went to not administration, which kind of.
So Anthony reports to the Board of Elections. And so I guess he was trying to take our request to them first, because that's the process. And then I guess they didn't really, I maybe felt like they didn't have the authority to make a decision. I don't know. So I guess maybe they're deferring to the county administration on this.
Yeah.
I know Jack's not on, and I know Jack was trying to get some relief on this, but
yeah,
I'm going to be honest. I already know the answer to the letter, so I don't know.
I think we should send a letter. I think we should still request it. I still think we should request it. We should send a letter. Do you want me to write the letter? I can write letters.
Send a letter and have it itemized.
Because I do feel like we did we went through that a great deal. We spent a lot of time on that. And I think it's very fair to ask for an adjustment and not to even have a response, and then to go to the county itself. Well, then we'll do that. And I think we should at least put a letter out there asking for relief. And then we'll deal with what the response is.
I think Mr. Heath had thought, to see if they would meet us halfway. The reason we're here is because their estimate was off.
Was wrong. So
I'm back.
Yeah. Oh, Jack's on. Okay. So we were discussing this, sending a letter to the administration, asking for relief, because apparently the election boards, I guess they didn't want to make a decision on it. So they were deferring to the county administration. So I guess the discussion is, do we send a letter requesting some relief from this, since the initial one was, I'm not 100% confident on how the letter would go, but that's up to everybody else. If they want to send the letter, then that's fine. Your thoughts?
I tend to, Mir, I tend to agree with you. I think we've done what we can do for this topic. I'm not happy with the outcome, but our alternatives, as we spoke about before, are very limited. I think that, as you do, I have a tendency that this, based on all that's going on, I'm not sure it's going to be taken seriously at the county level. So my recommendation at this point is let's go ahead and do the budget amendment.
April, you have any thoughts on that?
I agree with Jack. I do think we should send him a letter.
Oh, no, Jack was saying, go ahead and move forward with the budget amendment.
Yeah, we should.
Okay. To do the budget amendment, not send a letter.
Yeah, I agree with the budget amendment.
Okay. Angela?
No, I agree with the letter. I mean, they
Michelle?
sent it was, yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just think, I mean, it was such a big mistake. I mean, I understand people make mistakes and there's an error and this, that, and the other, but it was such a big mistake. And we even have, we even said we could go halfway on it. I think just having it in a letter to the county, regardless of what the response is, I think we should just make last ditch effort. That's just my thought.
Michelle?
For me, I think as much as I would love to send a letter, I agree that we already know what the outcome's going to be. And to drag this on is only going to make more work for city employees and the Board of Elections employees, and really I don't see it necessary. So yeah, I would say let's just go ahead and do the budget amendment. I wish I could send a letter in good faith to the county, but I don't see it happening. So.
And I agree as well. I think we should move forward with the budget amendment. I kind of, that's one crystal ball I can read. So anyway, so Kim will place that on the next legislative agenda. And let's see. So council comments. April, what have you got?
What do I have? Really, Mir, I don't really have anything. I just want to continue to tell everyone to be safe. Continue to social distance. And hopefully this will spiral down to actually where we want it to be. I'm just so glad to be able to see faces and be able to communicate at a distance. But I just pray that everybody comes out of this safe, because I just lost a family member last week, COVID. Everybody take this serious, because it is serious.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Angela?
Now, Mr. Boder, just because I wanted to write a letter and you didn't, that you get to skip the speed limit on Stonegate, okay?
Is that?
That's, yeah, lowering the speed.
Oh, I am so sorry.
Okay, now we need to respectfully go back and circle up to limit. And I already agree with that. And I agree with writing the letter, which you didn't agree with, but we love each other anyway.
Yes, we do. Yeah, so I guess, okay, so the lowering the speed limit on Stonegate, I apologize for not seeing that, because it wasn't in the thing, but I see it on here. All right, so Angela, you want to take that?
The HOA at Stonegate, it's a townhouse development here on off of North Shoemaker, and they were having some observation of residents speeding through the development, and there was a handful of residents that in fact were speeding through the development. There was a speed, I guess a speed limit test or a speed study, I should say, and it in fact showed that most residents were following the rules, but a handful were not. But the speed limit here on Stonegate is 30 miles an hour, and the HOA came back and said, yes, they agree with if we could lower the speed limit to 25, that would be great. I think the people coming from Zircon, which is about a mile from the stop sign, they do speed up. They do speed and get there pretty quick. But most everyone else does it. But I guess just for safety, and it's such a small little community, the HOA wanted to see if the city would go ahead and lower the speed limit. And it is a city street.
Julia, Mr. Mayor, any comments on administration's position on that?
Yeah, thank you, Muir, and thank you, Angela. So we conducted a speed study that resulted in a mean speed on the first study period of 22 miles per hour and a mean speed on the second of 23 miles per hour. And as Councilman Blake said, that could indicate that most people are doing the right thing and following the speed. The 95th percentile was 32 miles per hour and 30 miles per hour. So still, even the speeders were going fairly slow. But that being said, looking at our Vision Zero efforts, we want to continue to drop speeds in residential neighborhoods. So dropping speeds in a targeted way right now, I think is fine. We also want to do it generally. The Vision Zero task force is coming together remotely, of course, but the Vision Zero task force is working on coming together. Will White is leading that effort, and they will be proposing speed limit reductions citywide, especially in residential neighborhoods, on the tertiary streets. So expect that. I think we do have council representation on the task force. I can't remember who was appointed, and maybe Jack knows, but I don't remember. But regardless, we'll keep council apprised of all the process as well as the recommendations ultimately. But I think this is in line with the direction that we're going, looking at this sort of thing. And just a reminder that when people do identify traffic issues, we can do speed studies, like this one. We can even do studies to determine what types of vehicles. We can tell tractor trailers from cars, from bicycles, et cetera.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess maybe I would frame this to the council and I don't know, maybe the mayor could weigh in. Do we go ahead and look at maybe reducing the speed in that particular neighborhood, or did you want to wait till the Vision Zero is, or can we still go neighborhood by neighborhood?
Well, I think we can pretty easily respond to this issue, and then we'll get to a citywide. Now, the way it would work citywide, though, is where the lowest speed limit exists, that wouldn't be signed usually. So where it's 30 today on the average city residential street, that'd be dropped to 20 or 25 or whatever, or 15, who knows. But that's how that would work. So that wouldn't be signed on most streets. So if it was dropped to 25 here, it would be signed.
Okay. April, do you support the administrating putting together an ordinance to drop the speed limit?
Sure, I do, but please come over here on Daytona 500, please. Yeah. Because we have an awful problem over here too, as well.
Angela, I assume you would support this?
Yeah, I would.
Michelle?
I can completely sympathize with these folks. I can support it. Yeah, because people use our street as a corridor between two main streets. So I feel their pain.
Jack?
Yeah, I support it.
And I support this as well. So if you all want to begin drafting a ordinance to make that change, I assume it's an ordinance, correct? Julia, am I correct?
To be determined. We'll find out.
Okay.
I think so.
Or
We'll check.
whatever you got to do to make the change, bring it back to us.
We will.
Thank you. Comments. April already made her comment. Thank you, April. Angela, back to you for a comment.
Just please donate blood and just take care of yourself and everybody around you. Check in on your neighbors and your friends. That's it.
Michelle?
Just please take this seriously. They just released new numbers where they think the average daily deaths is going to be about 3,000 nationwide. The Trump administration just released those numbers. So very soon, they think by June, it's going to be about 3,000 daily deaths. We need to take this seriously. It's too soon to open up. We really need to find a way to work around it because too many lives depend on us staying home and staying safe. And please wear your masks.
Thank you. Jack?
Yes, I have one other question though that maybe we can talk about. Mark, are you still on?
Yes.
Okay. When we're going through and we do the legislative, the ordinances and the resolutions and the minutes actually, and we have this process that I understand why we're doing it the way we're doing it now, where we sign, scan, and forward to the next individual. And some of them could have 5 or 6 signatures on it. In business, we used to use an electronic signature authorization with a passcode. Is that acceptable in using these documents like this?
I don't think there's any provision that I'm aware of in our code authorizing it. I don't see why it couldn't be done. If it can be done practically, then I think we can authorize it.
Yeah, because I'm sitting here right now with probably 30 pages of signatures, the originals, and I assume, based on what Kim's instructions were, that each of us who has to sign has a similar thing, plus all the staff members. So if we could do it electronically with a password where no one could sign without having his own personal password, I think that would be beneficial and certainly save some trees.
Yeah, I see no reason why that couldn't be set up. And I think you could also have each individual, if you were not able to do that right away, each individual could sign a separate identical sheet constituting the full document too.
Yeah, but
Yes.
the only issue with that is that it has to be signed in pen, and all the signatures have to be in pen, which means that everyone would have to have a color scanner and a color printer in order to do that.
Yeah.
Mr. Heath,
Yes.
we did start out in the beginning, very beginning of this thing, scanning and signing, and I just thought you liked signing and emailing and everything, but I'm joking. We are now using an electronic signature. I'll get in touch with you with that, okay?
Oh, fine. Yeah, if we can do it.
And we'll, yeah, okay.
Well, when we did this
Thank you.
last round for the special meeting and I got it, I have my signature set up in Adobe PDF and I signed the document and then sent it to Kim, or I think I sent it to Angela or whoever I forwarded it to sign.
Correct. And I'm using PD Fill to just insert it. So you could do the same thing, Jack. We'll hook you up with Phil Garrett to,
Ms. I looked for the attachment and I didn't see one on any of my emails to sign and to send, because I was going to sign it, take a picture and send it to Kim. But I looked through all my emails and I didn't see the attachment.
I don't know. Okay.
Maybe Mr. Boda can resend that.
He will. He will.
I'll resend it.
Okay. And my last comment is give blood and be safe.
Yes. Thank you. And my comment, I want to echo what my fellow council members said. Please be safe, give blood, support our local restaurants. A lot of them have switched their business models over. And so I try to, when I'm off once a day, order from somebody. So, and pick it up because a lot of times those other services take a lot of fees from them. So, and then my last comment is may the 4th be with you. We are adjourned.
Dang it,
Thank
I
you. Have a
missed
good day.
that.